Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here, and I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference. Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance sports parenting coach, proud co-host of the Raising Athletes podcast, now halfway through our 5th year, and the author of Raising Empowered Athletes, which has now been out just over a year, where I've been having so much fun going around the country, meeting with parents, meeting with athletes, meeting with coaches, and giving the tools and helping support is my mission to how can we make this journey fun, enjoyable, and for our kids and ourselves to get out of it what we truly hope that we want them to do, which is to make some friends, to get better at what they do, and hopefully learn, something about their sport, but really more about life. And I was privileged enough to be on Erica's podcast, my guest today, who was a D3 soccer player at Johns Hopkins. And now she really works with a lot of athletes and their parents around focusing on what matters most, the fundamentals and the training and being a coach that can really help your athlete get from where they think they may want to go to where they, defining what it is and making great strides. So Erica, thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. It seems like yesterday you were on my podcast and I was really excited to be asked to be on yours because I'm just a huge fan of what you do and I love your book and I just think our messages really align.
I agree. Yeah, when we're singing from the same song sheet, and I think we need to be opening this up to as many people as possible because I think there are parents out there that really want to hear what are the right ways to do this or what are the most supportive ways to do this. There's no one right way, but supportive ways so that, again, I think there's a lot of stressed parents out there that are feeling like overwhelmed by how do I navigate this giant hairball that is youth sports, that is a $37 billion business. So I want to get into all of that, but let's start first with you. I always love hearing the background and how you got to where you are. Can you tell us about where you grew up, what your journey was as a kid in athletics and how you got to be a coach?
I grew up in Maryland and I started soccer when I was 6 years old. And my mom took me to my first practice, even though I was crying in the car on the way there. But she, like a good mom, was like, we want to give her opportunities to try different activities and see what she falls in love with. And to this day, I'm really grateful she took me to that practice and didn't give in to me crying. So
do you recollect that, or does she just tell you the story?
I do recollect it, which is crazy. I was only 6 years old and
Yeah.
I remember I was crying the whole car ride, but then when we parked at the field, the energy started to shift, and then I went to practice. I loved my coach. I loved chasing the ball around, and after that first practice, I said to my mom, "When do I get to do that again?"
Oh.
And and then since then I just fell in love with it. But I had been in rec soccer until high school, and I was able to do other sports like gymnastics. I dabbled in lacrosse a little bit. I was just a very active kid. I had an older brother and I was always playing like football and baseball with his friends. So I was trying all the sports. But on the side, I just developed a natural passion for soccer and it just organically worked out. And by the time I turned age 14, I said to my parents that I wanted to try out for a travel team and get more serious about it. And that was my decision. And I tried out for the best travel team in the state of Maryland and made it. And I was ready for a new challenge and started to consider playing soccer in college. And I was looking at a wide range of schools, Division One, ACC, Big Ten, Division 3 as well. And I ended up actually turning down D1 offers to play soccer at Johns Hopkins University because I really did want a smaller school in the end. I wanted a more academic experience. I really liked the coach and the culture and the traditions of the program. And I also still wanted to be close to home so that my parents could watch me for another 4 years. So they were only about 20 minutes away from Hopkins campus. And it ended up being probably the best decision I ever made. And I got a lot of playing time when I was there all 4 years, started all 4 years, was a captain my senior year, and just really contributed to the program and just making an impact. And I'm just so grateful for my experience as an athlete because I look back on the years and I never felt like my parents were ever really pressuring me into decisions. They were more so checking in and asking the right questions, but it was really up to me that I had to do this and I wanted to do this and get to the next level. So we can talk about more about my parents, but they truly did raise an empowered athlete. And I feel now, just as a working woman, I can make my own decisions, take initiative, and be autonomous. And I'm just grateful for my parents along this journey.
Yeah, there's so much I love about your recruiting journey and parents who are listening who might be on the front end of it. I think what I see a lot, and I'd love to hear your opinion too, Erica, but like we get so caught up in the shiny object syndrome. Like, well, they've got nicer locker rooms, or they're playing in a tougher conference, or the kids, and again, 16, 17, 18-year old, they are, how many pairs of shoes am I going to get? And at the end of the day, the things that you talk about to 5, 10, 15, 20 years after your experience have nothing to do with how many pairs of shoes you got or what the locker room experience was. It's always about, those are the best friends of my life. I got a phenomenal education. Those were my people. To be able to go in and say I was a 4-year starter, at the end of the day, do you really care whether it was D1, D2, D3? Like, if you get to go in and become an impact player, and I always encourage parents, like, cast a wide net, yes, and talk to the D1s, talk to the D3s, because then you can make an informed choice. Do you remember back then feeling like, ooh, I really want, like, I know there's this social pressure to be able to say, oh, I play D1. Did you feel that at all? Or were you really that mature that you were like, no, 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 I know exactly, like, that's impressive.
Well, I wouldn't say I was the most mature kid. I've come a long way, but back then it was pretty crazy because during that time there was a D1 or bus mentality, I'd say. And a lot of factors went into my decision, but I talked to the coach at Hopkins and he told me, he was like, look, if you come in prepared and the player you are now, you stay healthy, you are going to make an impact here and get playing time. And I wanted playing time and I didn't know if I would get as much at an ACC or Big Ten school. I look back and I wonder what if, maybe I would have, who knows? But I really knew I could go into the Hopkins program, make an impact, and I also really did love the girls on the team. When I took my official visit, I remember everyone on campus that I ran into was like, the soccer girls are the nicest girls on campus. And I was sold then and there because it's another 4 years. You hang out with these girls pretty much Monday through Saturday, maybe Sundays during study hall. So it's a lot of time, and you don't have to be best friends with all 30 girls on the team, but if everyone gets along, that's a plus. And that was really important to me too. And I just had my wedding this past year, and a couple of them were my bridesmaids and they attended my wedding. And, we've been out of college for 10 years, and just catching up with everyone at such a special day is just so cool. And, I look back too on my career at Hopkins, and obviously from the outside, people would say, oh, that was a success. You got All-American a couple times, you got Hall of Fame, you got National Midfielder of the Year, you broke scoring records. But I don't remember the goals I scored. I don't really vividly remember that stuff, but I do remember what I did with the team, the dinners, the events, the soccer formals, all those fun college things. I remember all of that, which is so crazy because you don't remember your goals, all of your stats. It's just wild to look back on.
Yeah, I love when people do ask you that, like, what was your favorite game? And you're like, I remember like two matches I played in, and one was because it was the school that we played against. That the school we played against was the one I had just transferred from, so I really wanted to beat. But like, other than that, like they all become a blur. But the relationships and the support network for life that you get from that experience, if you're there for the right reason. And it sounds like you were, and it sounds like your parents wrote the book on how to be a great sports parent. So maybe take me through what are the messages, maybe not even something they overtly said, or maybe was overt, but do you remember, like, it sounds like they allowed you to do your process. I think even, 15 years ago, to wait until you were 14 or 15 to play club sounds late. No?
Yeah, it not during that time. I would say that was pretty standard, but nowadays it is very late. And I think a lot of parents today of 10, 11-year-olds are like, well, if we're not on the best team at this age, it's over. They are not going to ever make the higher level team when they're in high school, or they're never going to play in college, which is a lie. And a lot of people give me crap for saying that, but it is a lie. I think a lot of people are in denial with it, but yeah, I just fell in love with it on my own. I never felt pressured to go to practice or play at a certain level or be on a certain team. I just loved my rec experience. I had a great coach. He was actually a volunteer dad coaching, but he was pretty soccer literate, that I learned a lot about the game. But when I switched to travel ball, that's when I had coaches with, their higher licenses. But that was the time to learn from like true professionals in soccer when I was 14. And yeah, my parents really let me drive the bus. My mom, she was like kind of just the rah-rah cheerleader on the sideline, just that overly positive mom, like, good job, guys, like all the time, and super supportive. And then my dad was the opposite. He was just silent. Like, he would just stand at the corner flag away from all of the parents because he didn't want to deal with the BS. And he was just the silent dad that was just golf clapping, just supportive, like, good job, Erica. And that was really it. And yeah, it was the perfect combination. But I would say my mom, she was a little bit more involved, in the sense when I was starting to get recruited. She helped me to figure out like where to start in the process, like when to email coaches and like how to reach out. So she like was involved with that, but I had to write my own emails. I had to do my own follow-up. So yeah, really it was all me.
And what I like about that is I think the biggest gift they gave you was they let you develop your own love for it. And maybe we can jump into this a little bit, but what I feel like is happening so much is because we're exposing them at younger and younger ages, they did love it, or they do kind of love it, but it's not that they don't love it. It's just that when it's 8 days a week, 13 months a year, and you're 8, it's a lot, right? They don't get time to be a kid. They don't get time to try other sports. They don't get time to go on vacation, or they take a week off and they feel like it's over. And at 10 or 12, kids feeling like a pro athlete would feel like I've got to be training all the time has driven this. Like, you were allowed to just at least I know when I took a season off, the second I came back to it, I was so excited to be back because I had a break. And now we give kids a week off in between club season and school season, and you're like, woohoo! There's a big gift, you know.
You're so right about that, and I think that time away definitely gives you a chance to miss it. And if you just keep going and you're on your grind since age 10 and you're not really taking a season off from your primary sport, then it's only a matter of time until that burnout happens. And again, I think a lot of parents are denying it of young ones right now. They're just saying, well, they're happy, they're enjoying it, and maybe they are, but they're not thinking about the long-term repercussions of it. And I've seen as young as 10 and 11-year-olds go on travel teams where they're driving an hour to practice 2 to 3 times a week. And no one's really thinking, okay, this might be a problem a couple years from now, and they might grow to resent the obligation that is this much travel for this much soccer or whatever sport they're playing. And I think everyone's in that instant gratification mindset. Oh, well, things are going great this month, but they're not looking at the bigger picture.
I was watching the U.S. Open last week, and it was an Australian player. I want to say his name is T2, but he took off 6 years from tennis and then came back and is now playing in the U.S. Open. And he did. He said in the interview, he was just like, I hit this wall. I don't even know how old he is. I'm guessing mid-20s, but like this wall where it was too much. It was overwhelmed. And he goes, and it wasn't until I was away from it, I was able to have some perspective, that I was able to look back and be coaching these kids and see what they're going through, but also realizing, oh, now I actually have the tools to deal with the stress that these kids are under now that I didn't have in the moment.
Mm-hmm. And I think that time away is not just good for the mental burnout, but also the physical side of things and keeping kids healthy and allowing them to try other activities that are working different muscle groups. They're developing different motor skills and learning spatial awareness in new environments, or they're learning how to work with new teammates or learn from a new coach. And I was really grateful to have my summers and my winters. Like in the summer, I tried out rec lacrosse. It was very laid back. It was only once or twice a week, and I was able to still be at a good fitness level for soccer, but I was working more of my upper body and core and really balancing out my strength to be a better athlete. I was still touching the soccer ball, of course. I was still doing my own stuff at home and becoming friends with the ball. I don't think a lot of kids are doing that anymore nowadays, but I still did that all while playing on a lacrosse team. And then what I found was when I went back to the fall, when it was go time for soccer, I was ready to rock. And my skills, I didn't skip a beat. I was still really sharp. And then on top of that, as the bonus, I still had the conditioning. I still had the speed and agility because I got that crossover effect from lacrosse. So yeah, I think there's just so many benefits to taking that time to try other things and then to mentally take a break.
I've got a 15-year-old client right now who I adore. She's in DC, and she has a twin, and her twin has always been a little bit ahead of her. Her twin made the team above her. She makes the team below. So I started working with her, and she decided, it wasn't my idea, but it was beautiful. In the spring, she decided, I'm going to run track. And she goes, nobody else in the soccer team's doing that. She was still playing soccer, but she was adding basically, intervals into her her soccer workouts. And she said, and then over the summer, she took some time off because they traveled a little bit. But she said, I brought the ball with me while we were traveling, and I would do juggling drills while we were traveling. Like, she got very creative with, so it wasn't soccer 24/7, but we had a call last week, and she just made the varsity soccer team for her high school team. And she's like, I'm so much faster. She's like, oh my gosh, you should see. I totally ate. That's something this age is saying. But like, she saw in just 6 months. So it doesn't even have to be like, oh, you've got to commit to playing on whatever, another team for a whole year. Like, she ran track for 3 months, but it increased her foot speed and her agility in just a couple months, that she's now seeing the huge benefits of it, which I think is awesome.
I love hearing stories like that. And I've heard that a lot with a lot of athletes who try out another sport. It just enhances their main sport. And one thing that just came up for me was that it's good for athletes to try other sports, especially young, because, if parents are concerned about getting a college scholarship and their kid playing sports, well, how will you know what their potential is if you don't allow them to try other sports? If you think your 10-year-old is a soccer player and you just put her in soccer, you will never know that, maybe she could have actually been a Division I softball player. Maybe she could have been a Division I 200-meter sprinter. So you will never know if you pick the right sport for your kid if you don't allow them to try other sports.
Yes.
So it kind of contradicts that like college scholarship dream where they're specializing so young, because sometimes it really comes down to, did they pick the right sport and do they have the genetic ability to play and meet the energy demands of this sport?
And have the passion behind it, because maybe they're good at it. And that's what I hear. Like, I'm really good at this, but now I don't have any other skills. So I can't, versus I dabbled in whatever, something else when I was little. Oh, I could go back to that. Or gosh, now tennis, actually being in an individual sport, sounds more appealing to me. I've been doing the soccer all my life, but what I really enjoyed, being able to control the outcome. Like, that's a great insight that you don't know when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, because you're just being put in to do whatever's in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm. It's sad, and I think it's getting worse. And sadly, I think we are in a deep hole right now. And I'm not a parent yet, but just in my conversations with other parents of athletes I work with, I mean, I do get it. And I'm sure I will understand it a lot more in the next year or two when I do have kids. But I get the FOMO and I get how hard it is amidst all of the noise. But that's why I always try to preach my message as loud as I can, because I know what parents are consuming on social media. I know the messaging that they are blasted with, and I know the lies they are being told, especially the young ones. I've heard clubs even tell parents of 9-year-olds that if they don't switch to a higher level team now, they'll never make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel sorry that parents believe those lies and then they make a decision for their kid out of fear and switch to a higher level team even though they were already happy where they were. Don't try and fix what isn't broken. And it should be about being happy and being joyful, falling in love with it at that age. And if they're good, it will organically work out. And we have to stop getting in the way of that.
I want to get to what you're doing now. So finish your story as to you leave Johns Hopkins, and then what do you pivot to? Because that's another thing you hear. Okay, great, you played in college, and was there a dream to go play pro? Was there a dream to go play at the next level, or were you done, or what happened post college?
So I actually did play in the WPSL, the women's semi-pro league, when the professional soccer league, the WPS, had folded. And I did that for a few years. I also played soccer in Brazil, lived there for a year, while also volunteer coaching kids in the favelas. So that was a very life-changing experience for me, because that's when I realized that I wanted to coach youth. I thought I wanted to coach pros and work in like Division I college strength and conditioning, but then I realized that kids are more fun to hang out with and adults are a pain. So yeah, I was just I don't know. I just fell in love with coaching kids because it was fun. You can really impact them. You can really set them up for good habits for a lifetime. And when I got back from Brazil, I actually started off as a soccer skills trainer. And I regret it because I started to realize I was part of the early specialization problem. And I was doing soccer skills lessons for 9 and 10-year-olds, like really young kids. And I look back and I kind of cringe and realize that they should have just been playing in the neighborhood or doing something else or trying another sport. So I stopped doing that. I went back to get my master's degree in exercise science. I got my strength and conditioning certification, and I started to work in a performance facility full time. And I just saw there was a need for strength and conditioning for youth female soccer players because ACL injuries were getting worse. Girls were not strong. They were under recovered. They were overtraining. They were getting a lot of overuse injuries that shouldn't be happening, like quad strains, hamstring strains, stress fractures, IT band issues. So I just saw a need for that. And I went all in to just completely changing from a skills trainer to a full-time performance coach. And I was mainly attracting female athlete clients in that like 11 to 14 age range, because there's so much going on during that time. Physically, their body is changing, and the changes they're going through can actually decrease performance and be a risk factor for injuries. So their bones are growing so fast, they are at higher risk for stress fractures. Their tendon on top of their knee is really tight because they're getting taller, so knee pain can happen. They're feeling awkward because they're putting on weight in fat mass, so they can't really control their momentum anymore. So I was attracting a lot of clients of that age group because parents were really concerned that they weren't performing as well or they weren't feeling as confident. And I love coaching this age group because I like to turn those growing pains into growing gains during that time. That's a phrase I've coined because if girls ages 11 to 14 get proper performance training, stability work, coordination, they start loading gradually with weights in the gym, it can make that transition and that growth spurt time a lot easier for them and a lot more empowering. So I've been working mainly with that age group for the past 12 years. I have some older high school girls and college girls, but they started with me during their growth spurt. So I really prefer that girls stay with me for the long run because this is a long pathway. There's steps we have to graduate to into training to really improve speed, strength, and conditioning. And I'm very clear in my process and how I train each age group and phase.
Yes, so much to unpack there. And what the thing that comes to mind from that differentiates, well, many things do, but one big thing is women, girls hitting puberty, having menses. So the onset of their menstrual cycle is probably happening, or is it even happening before 11 now? Sometimes I think it's happening even earlier, right? So what are you seeing as trends with that age group as far as, is it overuse? Is it like, what are the biggest call outs that you have?
The first one is definitely a lack in strength. So a lot of girls are not continuing the strength training during the season. You know, obviously it's great. I get girls in the summer doing strength training, but a lot of them will drop off during the season because they're scared it's going to hurt them for practice. But if they're with a performance coach who understands periodization, that strength training is going to keep them healthy for those demands year round. And it's also going to count as recovery because there's a lot of mobility and flexibility work within that. But yeah, just overall, it's a lack of strength.
And
And
sorry, Erica, when you say strength, does that mean lifting weights? Is that agility? Is that what are you doing with an 11-year-old? I mean, I can't imagine you're doing a ton of heavy lifting. It's more around building muscle, but with their body weight.
yeah, it's so that age group is more around starting with stability and coordination and mastering the body weight movement patterns first. So, can they do a body weight squat? Can they hold a body weight lunge or do a split squat? Can they do a perfect form plank? Can they do a pull up hold? So, more body weight movements when they first start out. And then once they master those, it's going to vary on each athlete how quickly I progress them. But for a girl who like masters it in a few weeks or in the first month, then we will add bands. Then we will progress with dumbbells. And then my older girls who are 15 plus do more like hex bar or barbell work because they have those years of training under their belt.
So we got to build the foundation first is kind of where you start out and then adding to it.
Yeah. And for 11, 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds too, the training should be really fun. So it's not like a formal strength session. It's more, okay, we are going to do a bear crawl race. We're going to do a crab walk weight race. And that works on your core stability, but also your upper body strength. Or we're going to play a game of tug of war where you're working on that pulling strength and getting your back strong. So there's ways to make it fun. But I always tell parents, look, if your girl is not ready to work with me at age 11 or 12, then that's okay. It's not going to hurt if she waits till age 13 when she's emotionally ready. I'd rather have her start when she is emotionally ready to do this. It shouldn't be you forcing her to do this program because you think my training's going to make her as fast as Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure you can see, I know when I work with kids too, you can see the ones that they're there because they want to get better and the ones that are there because mom signed me up and says I need to do this.
I'll tell a funny story. So I get these inquiries all the time for young kids, and they used to frustrate me so much, Kirsten, but now I just use it as an education opportunity on how each age group should train and why really young kids should not be doing advanced training because we risk injury and rushing that development. But I got an inquiry last month, and the mom said, hey, I have a daughter who is 11 years old. She's on a top team in the Tampa area and she's a goalkeeper. And she really wants to work on lateral power and explosive first step and also her vertical jumping power. My first question to that was, does your 11-year-old want to work on that, or do you want her to work on that? Because like you said on our last podcast, an 11-year-old doesn't know what ice cream they want. Do they know what vertical jumping power is or lateral power? So that was my first question. And then I just emailed her back and I sent her I have a lot of infographics on how each age group trains and what's going on physically, mentally, and hormonally at each age and how
Give a plug. Where can people find that?
It's actually on my website, www.ericasuter.com.
Perfect.
And I am very clear on what's going on physically, mentally, hormonally at each age and how training must align with those changes that are going on. And I just sent it back to her and I said, hey, here's what I would do for an 11-year-old. Here's what we would work on. And then here's what eventually she would graduate onto when she gets to that older age. Here is when we will start doing vertical jumps. Here is when we will start doing more power-based training. And I told her that at that age, most training influences are neural. And then by the time she's 14, 15, it's more muscular hypertrophy, which is when we would do more power-based work. So I sent it back to her and crickets. Nothing.
Found somebody else. Yeah.
And it, I don't need the clients, but it makes me sad for the kid. And it makes me sad because here you have a performance coach who understands physiology, child development, growth and maturation, who really wants to help. And then you ignore that. And that's what is sad.
I
And
think
there's
it
a
goes back
lot
to
of
your, sorry.
there's a lot of amazing youth coaches out there who understand growth and maturation, but sadly parents will opt for a trainer who will appease the parent and give this advanced training session that makes them ooh and ah, and it puts the kid at risk.
And to your point, yes, of course, the 11-year-old wasn't asking for any of that, but probably when the mom asked the coach, why didn't my daughter make the top team or why is she not playing? They need to give an answer. So these are the things that she needs to work on. So now we just got to go find the solution so that we can fill the hole so that we can get what we want, which is to be on the top team, because we think that's what's going to drive the long-term result.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so crazy because for athletic development and building strength and power and speed, nothing really happens until after that growth spurt.
Can you
So,
say that again?
yeah, so usually before the growth spurt, all the training influencers are more neural. That's why you have to work on a variety of motor skills, but nothing happens with true strength, power development, and speed until after puberty, when girls are settled into their menstrual cycle, when they have a little bit more testosterone, when their body is starting to reach a fully mature state with muscle maturity. So, yeah, it's just crazy. I see so many videos on Instagram of really young kids doing things I would be doing with my 18-year-olds.
So, what age is it wise to specialize, in your opinion? What age would you be saying, okay, I've got an athlete, she does multiple sports well, but she wants to get really good at soccer. She needs to focus at this age? Or is there an age where you'd be like, nope, you should be doing as many as you can for as long as you can?
I think neurologically, and if we're just looking at motor skill development, it is really important to expose young kids to a lot of sampling before age 12 or 12 and a half. So before that growth spurt starts in girls. And then after that is when they should pick a sport because their bodies are starting to mature. And then also the demands and the schedules and the academic stress is starting to pick up in those high school years, or starting in like 8th grade. So that's when they kind of have to pick one thing, because I've seen some high school athletes still be sampling, but it's within the same season, which is also not good. I've seen girls do soccer and basketball in the same season, and then they wonder why they have knee pain or they're getting stress fractures. So, by sampling, I mean dividing it into seasons young, and then eventually picking your sport by 8th, 9th grade. And I think most kids will know when that time comes. For me, it was when I suffered a stress fracture in my low back. I had IT band issues from playing soccer and lacrosse in the spring season when I was in high school. And that's when I had to make the tough decision. Which one am I going to do? Because this is way too much.
Yeah, the body breaking down, right? Which is what we're seeing a lot of. 70% of kids are dropping out altogether, girls at twice the rate of boys by age 13. And a lot of that, you're seeing the breakdown of the bodies that wasn't happening until college or, pro level, right?
Yeah, the injuries are really bad, and it breaks my heart because I'm in this world every day, and I get emails a lot and messages on Twitter and Instagram. And again, it's like the really young kids getting injuries that should not be happening that young. Seaver's disease for like over a year, knee pain for over a year, like chronic injuries, not just for a few weeks, but chronic. Um, and they just play through it. and they play through it not thinking that it could potentially lead to something more catastrophic down the road.
I mean, I have heard kids say that they didn't know that they could play pain free, like that they just assumed that that was normal, right? And that's the problem, is they don't know what's normal. They're just being told that you took a Friday and a Monday off, you're behind, so you got to, there's that. And it's hard with the balances of, and then when do you do family stuff, and when do you have a break, and when do you do homework? And what we're seeing is the anxiety. I'm having more and more kids now say they're off all of social, which I love to see, because they realize how much that's driving this feeling of lack just in general, but also in sport.
Mm-hmm. I got a message from a dad the other week, and he goes, "Hey, I have a college soccer player who has shin splints, and the option is not taking off. So what are your solutions?" And I replied, "Shin splints is an overuse injury, so you do have to take off. I can't really give any other advice than that."
Yeah.
I'm
If you
just
have a
so
magic
honest with
wand,
people. Yeah.
good. But
It's
it's,
like,
they
I'm not
need
going to tell
it.
you what you want to hear and like risk your kid getting worse.
Yeah. Can't walk now, but thanks for, yeah. Oh, crazy. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So,
I thought I've seen it all, and then you get an even wilder message.
right? Well, tell me about, do you have any that come to mind, putting you on the spot here? But what I always think about when I'm helping the parents, and to your point about, we plant the seed, we want to see it grow right away. But a lot of times there are those athletes that, in middle school, maybe even into high school, for boys particularly, they were average, but it was more they did it the right way. They approached it with a learning mindset. They were okay being on the twos team. They didn't have all the physical skills, or they were, with girls, it's, they look like giraffes on ice skates, right? They can't quite get all their, but then things start to come together later. Do you have some examples that maybe you could share too of that happening? Because I feel like those stories don't get told enough. And so parents are like, no, 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 no. We got to go with the all in model right away.
Oh my gosh. So, yes, actually, the first athlete I ever trained over 12 years ago. So, I started with her when she was in middle school, and she was not on the best team, and she wasn't on the best team until I would say high school, kind of similar to my story. So, 14 or 15. But she made a top travel team in the state of Maryland. She made varsity soccer as a freshman for the high school team, and the high school team was the high school I also went to, and they've been state champs. It's a really good high school program. So yeah, everything just came together for her during high school, but she was actually a little late into the recruiting process, so she ended up initially committing to a Division III program, McDaniel College. Went there for a year, but she had been in contact with Anson Dorrance from UNC women's soccer, but she was too late in the process, so he didn't have room for her for that first year. So she applied to UNC, and she transferred as a sophomore. She had to try out for the team when she got on campus, and she made it. So it's just crazy to think about, but she was one of those girls that she was just so persistent because she loved the game so much, and that was always her dream, was to play at UNC, and she was going to make it work regardless. And she got her grades up. She really improved her speed and conditioning to make the team. He had certain standards for the yo-yo test that they do, and yeah, she ended up making it. And then just seeing her like wear the Carolina blue, I was like, wow, that is such an amazing story, because things didn't really get high level for her until she was 14 or 15.
I love those stories too, because I do feel like parents get caught into that FOMO of look at them and they get it all. But if the child really wants it, then again, it's their journey, so they've got to show that they really want it. And if they don't, if you're sending out all the recruiting letters and filling all the forms out and you're the one talking to all the coaches, like, it's not sustainable because they have to go do the work then. And what I hear from those kids are like, well, I'm here because this is where my mom wanted me to be.
And I will say this girl's mom was very similar to my mom. Just the rah-rah cheerleader and just super supportive. Didn't really know too much about soccer and was just like, yeah, go do you. Like, just work hard and like, I support you. So it's just funny to see that, how the stories line up.
I do hear that a lot too, where kids will say, well, why did you choose the sport you did? Oh, it's the one sport my parents knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they're forced to keep their mouth shut. Like, they're not stupid. They figure these things out really quickly. They're like, I'm not doing that. That's what the sport my dad did. And he was always trying to coach me and it drove me crazy. So I'm going over here where I don't have to be bothered because he doesn't know anything about it. It's like, oh, interesting, right?
Yeah, my
Erica,
mom
this is
played tennis and volleyball. So yeah, she was not a soccer. And my dad is a physicist, engineer. Like, he was not a sports guy. So it makes sense.
But they had the approach though of being curious and allowing you to be curious and then not getting attached to the outcome. And that's where I think a lot of people are falling on their face because they're so envisioning the outcome at 10, 11, 12 versus, I don't know, we'll see if they, if this is what they want. We'll see if they pursue it. We'll see if they're healthy, if they're mentally fit. Like, there's so many pieces that need to come into play to actually make it to the right, level. And then to get to UNC even, there's no guarantee she'll play there, right? Like, so it's got to really be her dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if it's not the kid's dream, then there will come a time when they become resentful and they quit.
Yeah. Chapter 2, whose dream is it? Which I talk about a lot because it really does drive a lot of these conversations. So I need to let you run. I know we're a little over on time. I apologize. But I really want to ask you one last question and then I'll let you go. I love hearing from your perspective, and next time I want to talk about the favelas too. And that's got to be such a huge dichotomy to what we're seeing in the United States, right? These kids who are the one Olympian from the gymnastics team, like, her brothers would walk her the 2 hours to get to the gym so she could train for gymnastics, right? And because there was no other gym. So they have this inner drive that these kids who have trainers and, like, everything taken care of for them and, everything, they don't have skin in the game because it's all handled for them versus these kids who are like, this is my way out. I knew if I really wanted to, to be able to be somebody, I was going to need to get better at gymnastics or whatever. Did you see that firsthand?
Yeah. When I was in the favelas, I saw the pure joy of the game of soccer. And the neighborhood I was volunteering at was not the best neighborhood. I mean, there were cops with guns and drug deals going on, and here I am as an American girl with blue eyes coming into this.
Yeah.
So it was pretty terrifying. But the kids were playing on concrete. It's like cracked concrete, weeds coming through it, and they're doing like bicycle kicks and bleeding and scraping their knees on the concrete, and they were just having a blast. And it was just so cool to see the purest form of soccer. They weren't thinking about, oh, am I going to be on this top team, or am I going to play at this D1 school, or am I going to please my parent? Their parents were like at the house, like their parents were not there. The kids would like walk to this court, this soccer court themselves, or rode their bike, and it was just very present. That's the best way to put it. They weren't thinking too much into the future. They were just playing soccer for the love of soccer, and they were focused on what they were doing in that moment.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at Nike, they would have, internal ads stuff that they would show us, but like they would take t-shirts and wrap them with twine and that became the ball. Like they didn't even have a real ball. Like they're just for the beautiful game that is soccer, right? Like that, it's just to be out there. And I think that's what the 70s and 80s and pre that, that's what it was. You played the sport because you had fun doing it. It wasn't for this, oh, I hope I get to play D1 soccer, which again, I don't think there are 10-year-olds out there who organically, yes, by being surrounded by people who did or messaging that's something to do, they start to think that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're really truly just doing something because you're curious of it and the joy that it brings you, that's a whole different gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think now if kids can organize their own pickup games again, there's so much value in that for getting better at the sport, learning how to regulate your emotions, learning how to work with others and solve conflict. And it still exists. If you live in a neighborhood, it doesn't matter who you invite out to play, whether it's kids older than you or younger than you, just get out there and go. And I think kids need to take initiative with that, or parents need to at least encourage it and then get out of the way and not be involved in the pickup game, because we don't want mom and dad watching pickup soccer because then the kid will feel pressured. So it has to be that pure joy, that pure form of the game.
And not only pressure, but then the adults stick their nose in it and they start refereeing and putting in the rules. Like you said, I think half of the learning is coming under like, well, what are the rules today going to be? We're going to create our own rules. We're going to like, that's how you learn is, and then you have to advocate for yourself. And those are the skills that they're going to need in the classroom, on the court, in the boardroom, eventually, wherever they end up. Right. So the skills of the street are so much more than just soccer or the sport.
Mm-hmm. It runs really deep. I mean, there's so much to be gained from having that autonomy and having that creativity as well. It really goes into your career, and I'm finding that today too, that like just having those skills, I'm much more able to take initiative now or create new things and build things. And yeah, I just hope parents can think about the bigger picture after this conversation, because it's so important, and it's way more than the Instagram post and my kid goes to this school or we won the U11 national championship. It's like, well, what are they really learning here?
Yeah. And doing something without being attached to the outcome, but just doing it because you're like, oh, I'm just curious as to where and this will lead to something that I didn't even think about, which is fine, right? Like it doesn't have to be about the trophy. It doesn't have to be about the podium. It doesn't have to be about saying, I mean, again, who cares? What team did you play on when you were 11? How many times do you get asked that in your life, right? But yet we think it's so important that we need to have our kid on the ones, right? So it's our parenting ego gets so caught up in it, which I understand because so much of it is so public, but it's gotten in the way of us allowing for failure, for it to be messy, for it to not work out, for them to not have the best experience and learn from it and grow from it. All right, I want to finish with one last question we like to ask all of our guests. And I would, given what we were just talking about too, between Brazil and the US, so think globally when you answer this, but how would you finish the best athletes I know do this?
I would say the best athletes are able to be disciplined. And they're able to be disciplined on their own, and someone's not asking them to do it. And they understand that discipline sets them free.
And in your work, your day-to-day work, do you see those? Is it obvious to pick those ones out?
Mm-hmm. It really is. In performance training, the most disciplined athletes are the ones who do their recovery. Even though those are the most boring workouts, they prep their meals for the week so that they don't eat the crappy school lunch.
What age? Starting at what age do they start doing that? Prepping their own meals?
Usually like my middle and high schoolers. Yeah. So, but it's still a few people who do it. It's tough, but I think athletes who think about all aspects of performance and are disciplined with it, they go the furthest. And yeah, with the training, recovery, and nutrition, they're the ones who are doing the things that matter when no one's watching.
I say the little things become the big things, right? Yeah. And how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if your room is a pigsty and you don't know where your bag is, and then that leads to showing up at practice with only one shoe, which leads to a bad practice, right? Like it all becomes one big mess. And without the frontal lobe for these kids who are just, growing and the brain is growing, it's like parents helping them put pieces in place to be successful at it, just not doing it for them. And that's the part that I think we fall down on. We just keep rescuing and they don't learn. And then if they don't get to learn from the pain, then they don't get to grow.
Yeah.
Erica, so fun connecting with you again and always. So thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find you again?
I am mainly on Instagram at Fit Soccer Queen. And then from there, the link in my bio will lead you to my website and the female athlete books that I offer. So
check out her podcast. You might recognize a guest on there. She's got a lot talking about how do we support these athletes, learning from people like you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, because you're living in the trenches. You've done this, and now you're helping these parents, which is what they need. We need the support so that we can get to where we need to go. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. All right, parents, we got this. Like, share, check out Erica's podcast, look at her work, find somebody that can, and maybe it's not Erica because she's not in your local neighborhood, but reaching out for tools to help your kid for the stage that they're in. I like to say, parent the child you have, not the one you wish you had. And sometimes we think, oh, I want my kid to be the All-American. They may or may not be, but let's parent the one that is right there in front of us, that's asking you for feedback on what they're doing right now and help them enjoy the ride. Thank you. Let's do this. Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here. And I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference.